Well, hey, everybody, glad to be with you again. And today's topic is how to grow your business through intentional networking. And David, we also often talk about how when we're starting out, especially, that really it's the circles that we already are in
Right.
that we find at least those first early clients. And have you found this to be pretty true and most people you've talked to and worked with?
Right. Well, absolutely, because this is when you're first starting out and you don't know how to do a full marketing campaign, or you don't know how to do all these other things. You don't know how to do advertising. You don't know how to do all these other things. What's the best and easiest way to get started? Well,
Mhm.
start with who you know.
Yeah.
And so this is really kind of, and some people are able to do this like consistently full time because they figured out how to keep expanding their network and how to build on one after another contact and another connection. But there's this, this is where, like, when you don't know what else to do,
Yeah.
start thinking about the people that you know. And
Yeah.
even if that person that you know isn't the person that would be interested in what you're doing, they may know people
Yeah.
that would be, or they may know of an organization that you could go get connected to, or
Hmm.
a networking group or something that you could go plug into that would be relevant
Hmm.
to what you want to do. So
Yeah, yeah, and in my experience, I think a lot of people just I think they do it poorly, not because they intend to, but because they just haven't thought about, how to strategically do it, right? That's why we talk about the intentional side of it. It's there's lots of people that network. Uh, there's very few that do it intentionally well.
right.
And actually, I was talking to a small business owner a week or two ago, and she's had her business. It's a brick and mortar situation, but a couple years into the business, and she's kind of hitting the plateau, and she's not sure where to go. And but then she admittedly said, like I don't get out. I don't get out of my store. I don't go out and meet people. It's something that she basically resists. And so therefore she had, I was just trying to share with her a few ideas of, where kind of like you said, whether it's associations or groups of people that might make sense for her to connect with that would be aligned with her business. And, I think it's one of the fastest and most effective ways to build your business if you do it well. But like I said, I think a lot of people, they may not know where to begin. So, it's also one of the most intimidating things for a lot of people. If you're not a highly relational,
Right.
outgoing person, I think it's very intimidating to folks. I met a realtor years ago and she wanted to build her business. And I mean, even just meeting with me and a friend, she was like scared to death, right? Like you could just tell that she just wasn't
Pretty
comfortable in her
nervous.
own skin. So she kind of vanished. I never saw her, in the community and around very long, and I'm not sure where she went or what. I assume she's not doing what she's doing anymore.
Right.
But I think a lot of it was she was intimidated. She just it was something that was a lot for her, and so there's a lot of, I will say, kind of mental hurdles to get over when you're thinking about this. For some, others, I'm a natural connector and talker, so I kind of realized later on in life that I do this more naturally, and I take it for granted because a lot of people I know that I've met, they do struggle with this, and they'll admit that and they'll talk about that and how they know they should be getting out there. They know they should be connecting with people more to network, and they just don't. So, um, it's not unusual if somebody struggles early on, that whole 30-second elevator pitch kind of thing. A lot of groups will talk about, sharing your business in 30 to 60 seconds, and that's an opportunity. But if you don't do it well, and you don't know how to communicate what you do well and the value to those, and you make it all about yourself, then it's really not going to go well.
Yeah, and I agree. I actually, a couple years ago, met with a guy who was an author of a book, and the whole entire premise of the book was networking for introverts. And I can't
Mm,
remember exactly if that was the title or it was something, but it was like a best-selling book.
yeah.
It had done really, really well, and I
Mm,
got on a call with him, and we were talking about his book, and he made some really interesting points and observations. And like your friend who was terrified to even come meet with you,
yeah.
that's probably a person, most of the people who struggle with networking are the introverts, right?
Yeah.
Because we look at this as, it's all these people, all these going out and introducing yourself to people you've never met before over and over again.
Mhm.
And there's this fear of like all of that. It becomes overwhelming. But he really made an argument, and it was a fascinating argument, that introverts are actually the best networkers.
Yeah.
That
I
they're
was
really
I assumed you might go there because I agree with that, honestly. As a very extroverted, outgoing connector,
Mhm.
I do agree with that fully, because what I see is there's deeper relationships and connections made by the introverts, because they're not trying to meet everybody. When I walk into a room, I feel this natural tendency to go meet everybody that's in the room, whether it's 5 people or 100 people.
right.
An introvert is looking for who's that safe person, or who's
Right.
that one person I feel like I can resonate with, and then they go deep.
Mhm.
And that's honestly a better way to do this.
Right.
And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go on today too,
Mhm.
because the assumption is that extroverted people are the better networkers,
Right.
but I think you have to frame that in the right way.
Well,
I may meet a lot.
I think they're better conversation starters.
Yeah,
I think the extroverts are much
sure.
better at starting the conversation, because
Yeah,
extroverts are like, "Hey, how are you? Hey, how are you?" And they will go walk up to people much more naturally and easily
yeah,
and just be friendly.
yeah.
But I think your point is very valid, is that the introverts will maybe have a tougher time getting started,
Mhm.
but once they get the conversation going,
Yeah.
they'll have a much deeper conversation.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. It's the difference of being a mile wide and an inch
Right.
deep for a connector out extrovert. That's what I have to watch out for, right?
Right.
Versus somebody who, they may need to expand their network, but they're definitely going deeper with the people that they're connecting
Right.
with.
Right.
Yeah. And I know that one of the things that, we want to just touch on too is just how social media has given us a false sense of connection, because we're connected,
Right.
to friends or LinkedIn connections or whatever on social media. And it's like, those are just, it's not deep relationships in the most part. It's just I can stockpile all these people that are in my digital network, but do I really know them? Yeah, and so you can look at somebody's LinkedIn profile and say they have 3,000 connections. Well, but out of those 3,000 connections, like there's times where I'll actually have people, I'm like, how did I even connect with them?
Right.
Like it
Right.
came up or popped up somewhere.
Right.
Sometimes I wonder, like, did somebody connect me without me doing it?
Well, and then people feel like they know you when they
Right,
really don't.
right.
They really don't. They may see a few of your posts along the way and think they know you from how you've posted or what you've done, but
Yeah,
those aren't people that know you.
correct.
You've not been having conversations with them. And again, to have a true connection, there needs to be a human to human interaction. Like, you need to actually be able to sit across from somebody, even if it's like this virtually,
Right.
and have a conversation with somebody and have communication going back and forth that isn't just like a little digital, text message or something of
Yeah.
that sort.
Yeah, I actually met another person, a business professional, a couple weeks ago through a friend of ours, mutual friend. She said, I think the two of you should connect because of, you might have some things in common and how you can kind of cross promote each other's businesses. And so we did. We set up a Zoom call, and it was great. I mean, and for me, it was probably one of the most successful recent networking connections that I've made. And once again, it was, it was on Zoom. It wasn't out in a meeting somewhere in the physical space even. So, yeah, and I think once again, you get these things too. Where on LinkedIn, it's like we get pounded right by
Right.
connection requests and pitches and messages about how somebody can help us, and it's like, you don't even know my business based on what you've even said in the message,
Right.
and so it's shallow for a lot of people. And
Right.
so just kind of looking at some pitfalls that I see, at least, and maybe you see even more, David. But one is making it all about yourself.
Mhm.
This is one of the biggest things I think. There's actually I saw her this week. There's a woman locally. I was at a lunch meeting, and she made it all about herself again, and she always
Right.
makes it about herself and what she's doing. and
Right.
and I'm like, she's a nice woman,
Right.
but people, she's one of those people that people kind of like try to get away from in a networking setting. They're like,
Right.
if they see her coming, they
They
divert
tell
their eyes and move forward.
Right. They said, "Here, meet this person," and then run away. Like, yeah. I'm going to throw you to the sharks. Right.
Exactly. And a lot of it is just because she doesn't get like the things that we're going to talk about here. She doesn't understand them. She's just doing it poorly. And,
I
she's
think
out
this
there.
is the introvert extrovert thing a little bit too.
Mm,
I think what we were talking about before, I think the introverts are much better at making it about the other person because the extroverts are very good about going out and just starting and talking.
yeah.
Well, a lot of times they're doing what you said. They're talking about themselves.
Yeah.
And I actually had an interesting one of these here recently online on LinkedIn. As you know, for some reason, I usually decline most LinkedIn requests because I know they're just veiled sales pitches. And but the other day I saw one. I thought, well, this one doesn't look like it's necessarily a blatant sales pitch. It looks a little bit interesting, so I accepted it. Well, of course, was gullible enough.
Regretted that.
Yeah, I was gullible enough to like let that one through the gate. And then he starts messaging me. Would love to get on a call and chat with you. Would love learn about your goals for the next year. And I'm like, okay,
Here we go.
Here we go. And I'm like, so I just didn't respond after about he kept messaging me about 3 times, just kept coming. And I'm finally like, okay, fine. So I said, here's my goals for the next year. And then I asked him a question. So why is this of such interest to you?
Has he not replied?
He's never replied since. Ended the conversation. So why is this of such interest to you? Like, why are my business goals, a person that I've never met before, why is this of such radical interest to you? Because you won't stop pestering me.
Yeah.
Oh, ended it.
The good news about LinkedIn that for this is when somebody does, request a connection for me, like I'll at least then typically you'll see in their headline like what they do in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
And 90% of the time it's somebody trying to tell me how they're gonna 10x my coaching business through their amazing process. Yep. And so I know right then I'm like, oh, it's just gonna be the sales pitch, right? But but you're right. It's people just, I think the thing is, right, for some reason when we get into business settings we can get weird sometimes, right, as human beings. Like we feel like that pressure to sell, we feel that pressure to just to close a deal like immediately or something. Like something just changes in a lot of people's mindset, like and that's one of the biggest pitfalls, that it makes it about what I do and that it just doesn't really work. And another pitfall that I see is people, and like I said, this is a tendency I have to watch out for, is attempting to meet as many people as possible, like in a meeting. If you go to like a networking meeting or an event or something, a lot of people feel like it's just a volume game, a numbers game of I can just meet as many people, and kind of closely connected to that is how many business cards can I hand out to people. I've had that literally happen where a guy was literally walking around a networking meeting I was in, and he was just, it was like he was just doling out cards like candy, and he wasn't even really even stopping to talk to people. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Like, what do you think you're going to achieve here?
And at the end of your meeting, you probably threw it in the trash.
Oh yeah. Like
I don't know who this is, what it's for, or why I would want it. So
I'm
like the flyer on your windshield when you park somewhere, it's like immediately in the trash.
Yeah. So yes, business, sales, marketing, it's a numbers game to the level of you got to reach out to people, right? But at the same time, the quality trumps quantity when it comes to really making an impact. So I just want to talk about 6 steps to effective networking. These are things I've actually taught. I was actually a couple of years ago, I was brought into a national bank, local branch, their district managers and people, and they asked me to come in and talk about this. And I actually had somebody say, you know what, Chris, I've known these things for years, but it was good to remember because it's easy to forget some of these tips just of how to be strategic and intentional, because we can just kind of fall into patterns that aren't going to give us the results we want when it comes to this. And I think the first thing is just really taking that long game approach, that really quality relationships. They don't happen overnight, right? They don't happen in personal relationships. They don't happen in business relationships. And that whole idea of the know, like, and trust factor is not instant, right? Unless you, somebody so if you, David, tell me, hey, you ought to talk to so-and-so because I really trust them and I really think you guys would connect.
Right.
they're starting out on a different level, right? Like that trust factor. I'm going to go in with trust that can be lost, not trust that has to be gained. But in most networking settings, it's not that way, right? Most of the time, I'm walking into, in essence, a cold audience that I've never really, been around too much, or there's going to be new people even in a familiar audience, but to meet with them. So you have to really see this as a long game approach. There's a young guy in our community. He sells tech products, copiers, printers, alarm systems, things for companies. And he's very calm and quiet. He's not this outgoing, like super extroverted personality, but he's one of the most trusted, respected guys in our community in business. And everybody I talk to that I've met that know him are like, oh yeah, we love him. Like he's great, because once again, he doesn't make it about himself. He's very genuine. He's not pushy. You know what he does. He's very good at
Right.
basically sharing what he does ultimately, but he takes that longer game approach, and the more and the more people I talk to, like, oh yeah, we have his copier in our office, or you worked with him for this or that or whatever. Like I feel like I keep learning more and more people in our community, in our region, that are working with him, and a lot of it's, and he's probably 28 years old. It's not like that he's got 20, 30 years of experience under
Right.
his belt. So
Yeah, that's really, the thing is, like, if you met somebody and 5 minutes later they're asking you to hire them, it's hard, right?
mhm,
And if you're looking at it from, oh, I need to get customers, and too often people go to these events, I got to get clients, I got to get clients, and that's what they're about.
yeah,
Instead of, how can I meet people?
right.
How can I start building relationships with these people?
Mhm,
And it's what you're saying. After a while, people get to know you and they're like, oh, wow, you're really good at X.
right.
And as a result of being really good at that, I'd like to learn more about what you do and how
Right.
you do it. And once I learn more about that, oh, maybe we should talk about that because I
Yeah.
need that.
Mhm.
And there's all of these ways of doing it, but to do like you're saying, just meet as many people as you can. Get in front of. I just gotta be like, you want to hire me? 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 Okay,
Yeah.
no,
Well, then you build a reputation of the guy or
right.
the gal that
The
people,
insurance salesman who
yeah, that one, yeah,
I
you've
had.
had that.
Well, I was. Well, we had this guy who was at our old church
Yeah, he
who
chased you
sold.
around, didn't he?
He sold insurance, and every time I saw him, it was the same thing. Asking about our insurance needs. I'm like, yeah, it didn't really change from 2 weeks ago. We still got life insurance. I'm good. But every blast, and you see him come, and then he learned. He
Yeah,
saw us like see it, look up, see him, and then go the other way. I
yeah.
could even tell he noticed that we were avoiding him because it's like you can't
Well, how
stop.
would you, yeah. At some point, you've got to realize that people don't want to talk to you, right? Like,
Well, but this is doing it the wrong way.
mhm,
It's not taking it's not actually taking an interest in people.
right,
It's about pushing your agenda onto people.
right.
It's always about what I want instead of, hey, I would like to get to know you as a person.
Yeah, yeah,
And if I get to know you as a person and I discover that you have a need, which is something that I do,
right,
great. That's a totally different way of doing it as opposed to, hey, you want to buy insurance? Hey, you want to
yeah,
buy insurance? How about you? How about you? How about you? Like,
right.
okay, go away, go away, go away.
Yeah. Well, and I think that goes into our second point here is just, focusing on engaging rather than pushing yourself on people. So it's about connecting, not pitching.
Right.
And you're right. It's once again, I think that it's that ultimately it's about that pressure of I've got to sell, I've got to earn, a living, but what happens is over time it just starts to reek of desperation, and
Right.
it just doesn't go well. And so one of the best ways, to really connect is to ask great questions and then listen deeply, like
Mm.
don't just, keep spouting, words at people, but truly, it was funny years ago. I was actually, when I was youth pastor, I had a kid and we were on a trip and doing a mission trip, and we were paired up with like another group from another state that was doing this place, and there was these sisters that were in that group there. They had grown up in Australia. They were American family, but they had grown up in Australia. Well, ever since Crocodile Dundee, I've always loved Australia, So so I was like always
I
asking
think that
these,
happened to more than one.
yeah. So I kept asking them these questions about what it was like growing up over there and, this, that, and the other. But what I've just learned over the years, like really, if I ask 2 or 3 good questions, I can learn a lot about people quickly. And this one younger guy, he's like, man, he's like, you asked them like 20 questions. I'm like, yeah, because I said, I'm truly curious. Like, I'm not, they weren't annoyed. Here's the reality. Most people like to talk about themselves.
Yes.
And if you ask them questions and get them talking, then you can learn a lot about them as a person, but you can also learn about the needs that they might have or the interests they have that could tell you whether or not they could be a person to follow up with on a more intentional sales conversation. But once again, if you're just talking at people and you're not really asking people questions and learning about them, you're really hindering yourself from being an effective networker and really getting to the point of, because here's the thing, many times when I ask questions, I'm not the one that they need help with, but I probably know somebody that has the solution or the product or service that they need. And then I connect them. Well, guess what that does? That builds my credibility in their eyes, not because I have served them with my products or services, but because I've been a valuable resource to them. But that comes through asking questions. Any other thoughts on that from your standpoint?
Yeah, I think this is why introverts can really shine at networking. Because you think about it, what is a network or what does an introvert not like about networking? Going up and just trying to come up with things to say to people you don't know.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. You don't need to. And this is where it really changed and shifted for me. And I'm not a big networker, but when we all get into situations where you're in groups of people and you got to go meet somebody and you got to, you're either going to stand there in the corner with your finger up your nose or you're going to go talk to somebody. Well, okay, I guess I can just go introduce myself to somebody. And what I've learned is exactly what you're talking about. I don't have to tell them anything. I don't have to come at them with anything. I don't have to have a 30-second elevator pitch going. All I got to do is, hi, what's your name? And then they'll usually say, hey, hi, I'm Chris. And then I go, hi, Chris, what do you do? And so then they start sharing with you. Oh, that's really interesting. Tell me more. What? So do you do it like that? Or is it like this? And then all I'm doing is just asking them questions about them.
Right.
And you're right. People love to talk about their own lives, their own story, their own stuff. So I'm completely comfortable over there because I'm just asking questions.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting them to share.
Yeah, the pressure's not on you, right?
No, the pressure is completely off of me. I don't have to come up with something intelligent to share. I just have to listen.
Right.
I have to listen to that other person and go, that's interesting. Now, when you work on this kind of stuff, is it like this or is it like that? Oh, okay. So you're focused more over here. Yeah. That's what I do. Okay. That's interesting. So how do you like that? And you just learn about all these people and all of a sudden the door is either going to open or it's not.
Yeah.
It's either going to be, wow, I could help this person. I think, because then inevitably after you've asked them a few questions, they're going to say, okay, well, tell me about you. You're like, because they're going to start like,
right, because they want to reciprocate. That's the thing, right? Is most people want to reciprocate. Not everybody. There are people out there that you can walk away and they'll never have asked you a question. But I'll also say this day, one of the things as you're talking about that really hit me was a lot of times how we view networking. We think about going to an event, but the reality is you could be networking just by going out, in your daily life. And for me, with the age of my kids, I do a lot of networking unofficially sitting in the bleachers at sports games.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Like actually one of my recent clients over last year is an organization that I was in Florida with my son for a soccer trip, and we were at this hotel for 2 or 3 days, and I was, sitting at breakfast, eating meals with some families, and one of the moms, I didn't know anything about what she did for, business or whatever. Ends up she's the CEO of a regional nonprofit in our area. And we just got talking about what she was doing and what I did. And she's like, we should talk more about maybe how you could work with my team. That happened over breakfast at a soccer tournament, states away, not at a networking event, but it was because of the conversation. Right. And So I think we need to frame it in essence, you can always be networking,
Right.
but you just need to be, once again, apply these principles and these, strategies that we're talking about today. Just be a good, to me, it's like, just be a good human being and
Right.
ask questions and
Agreed.
be curious about people. Right.
Right. And when you ask here's stuff that's happened to me before. It's like you start talking about, oh, I wrote a book. Oh, that's interesting. What's the title of your book? Okay, well, what's it about? What So, what else did you want to do with your material? Did you just want to write, or did you want to do any other things with it? And then all of a sudden they start sharing. Yeah, I really wanted to coach on my content, but I've never really been able to, build a coaching business. I really don't know what I'm doing. So, what do you do? And I go, well. And I'm like, I help people build online coaching businesses. And they're like, what? Really? And they're like, you've got to be kidding me. How do you do that? What do you do? And then all of a sudden, now they're leaning in.
Right. They've sought you out at that point. You haven't pushed
now
yourself
all of a sudden it's become clear you can help them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not like feeling like, oh, you're pitching me. They're like, wait a minute, tell me more.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Maybe you can help me. And all of a sudden it's just a totally different dynamic. And again, if you're having a conversation with somebody and there's no connection, the conversation will die soon enough. And then you go on to the next person and meet someone else. And so it's just like you said, it's just about being a good person, showing an interest in others, asking questions about how they, who they are, what they do, how they're doing, and just showing an interest in their lives. And it really is, when you approach that, especially from an introvert's point of view, when you just come up with, I'm just going to ask questions.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off of you.
Yeah.
And it makes it way, way easier and much more effective.
Well, and I think once again, if you just kind of when you just kind of go armed with, a few basic questions like, who are you? Tell me about yourself. What do you do? That, you don't need like 20 questions. You just need like 2 or 3 that kind of get the conversation going. Because then one of the things is, as you're listening, as you're connecting with this person, finding ways to be valuable to them. Once again, there was an accountant years ago I met in our area, and he said, Chris, he's like, I have so many clients that call me and ask me, do you know a plumber? Do you know a mechanic? Do you know a pest control person? He's like, he goes, I'm as valuable to my clients and even just people that aren't my clients, but I've met them out in the community because of who I know. So he was like this resource hub for people, but he had gained this great reputation in our community that also helped his business as a CPA. But it was because he was valuable to people, because he had done so much networking himself and he was out and about so much, people, there's some people in our world that it's like, like you can call and go, do you know a guy that does X, Y, or Z?
Right.
And they always have an answer. There's a good friend of mine. She and her husband have owned rental properties and they've just done a lot of different things in the area. But because of their experience in business over the last 30 years, anytime I call her up and I'm like, hey, do you know a tree trimmer that you trust? Or do you know somebody that, we're looking into this, do you know a contractor or whatever? And she's like, yeah, here. And she'll text me their number or whatever. Like, but once again, that's the easiest thing for that business that's going to receive my business on the other end, right? Like,
right. You've been helpful.
Yeah, but she is valuable, and that gentleman I was talking about, that accountant, he was valuable to people, and therefore he built this credibility that now if I need accounting help, guess what? Who am I going to turn to? I'm going to turn to the guy that's helped me in other ways. So just finding it, your value isn't always even just about the exact thing you offer. It's maybe it's just your connections that you make or have, so that you can make those connections as referrals. And so the other thing here is, really follow up. Once you've met somebody, follow up with them, whether it's been at a networking event, whether it's at the soccer sideline, whether it's, you just stumble into somebody out while you're out and about in the community at the mall or restaurant or something. Just follow up with them within, the next 24 hours or so and just say, hey, it was great connecting with you. Would love to stay connected and maybe get together and talk in more detail at some point. People, once you have these initial starter conversations in a good way, people are very open to ongoing conversations in a relationship, because most people realize that, at the end of the day, business is still all about people. Even if you're selling online, you're still connecting to people. So The other thing here is to be a giver, not a taker. You know, I think that's one of the biggest things is when somebody just kind of dumps on you, they feel like we feel like it's all about them. They're trying to just get from us. They're takers, not givers.
Mhm.
And so a good kind of a rule of thumb is kind of a 10-to-1 ratio of like being a give, before you ask, and there's no perfect number to that. Don't get me wrong, but it's just the idea that I'm going to try to be a much bigger giver than a taker in this relationship. And then ultimately, the whole idea that I think it was Bob Berg, he wrote a book about givers gain. I think that's actually a principle of the BNI organization as well, as givers gain. When you give and you're valuable and you're helpful, you end up gaining in return because people do reciprocate with people like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's don't get stuck on the ratios. It's more of
Right.
a general idea. It's not like somebody is asking you a question now. Oh, I can't do that yet. I'm only at 8. Like
Yeah.
I have to give you 2 more things before. No, I don't do that. But
Right.
it's more just the principle of like, hey, I'm going to try and help you far more than I'm going to ask from you.
Right.
I'm going to try and assist you. I'm going to try and help you if I can,
Right.
far more than I'm going to ever ask anything from you. And at the end, the person starts to sense that. The person starts to sense that, hey, you're really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
You're really giving me good advice. You're giving
Right.
me useful information. I appreciate that. And I'm grateful for that. And as a result, I want more.
Yeah.
And that's where they will, because again, it's about getting people to lean in instead of leaning out. Like, the guy who was the insurance salesman, everyone leans out.
Yeah.
Get away, get away, get away. Because I know it's going to make it about himself and he's going to be trying to take.
Yeah.
But if you do the opposite, people quickly start leaning in because like, well, what else do you have?
Yeah.
Well, this is the kind of work that I do. Okay. Well, maybe we should talk.
Well, I heard Dan Kennedy one time, he talked about it years ago, was being a welcome guest, not an uninvited pest, and he shares a funny story about that but it's the idea that when you have been a giver and you're the kind of person that looks to be helpful to people and valuable to people, you become that welcome guest to them. And, the thing is about business for a lot of people is it's about timing, right? Like, when do people need what you have to offer? Many times it's not today. Sometimes it's 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now. But if you build that relationship, that's why it's a long game is, if there are people that like I said, if I trust somebody as a mechanic, let's say as an example, but I don't have any car problems right now, but they're the person I trust and I go to. Well, next time I have a car issue, I'm going to go to them because, I trust them. There's a relationship there. Hopefully, right. You don't want to have to need your mechanic all the time, right? That's not the goal of, of the game. So, but if you can truly build that rapport and that trust with people when they need what you have to offer, you become top of mind to them, and you stay top of mind by building relationships and by being present continually and consistently. And I think that's another big part of this is consistency. Is where are you showing up? There are people that I've met once and I actually liked them at a networking event or something I've been at, but then I never see them again I was actually talking to a new guy I met yesterday and he was talking about a mutual connection that we both have. And I was like, you know what? I haven't seen that guy in like 6 months or a year. And he was very active for a while and then he disappeared. And I'm like, but when you have to stay consistent if you're going to be that reputable person.
Right. Well, it's like having a relationship with somebody and you drop in their life for a few weeks and then you disappear for 6 months.
Right.
You're not going to have a strong friendship with that person if you're just, if you go MIA for long periods of time. So
absolutely. So here's us kind of wrapping things up today. Just kind of some networking ideas of kind of where to start if you're not sure where to go with getting out there to connect with people. There is BNI, the Business Networking International groups. They're all over the world. Obviously, they're an international organization. It's all about networking. What's great about them is basically you can only have one person per industry in the group. So if you're an accountant, if you're a coach, if you're a speaker or a trainer, there's not going to be a bunch other trainers and coaches that are competing against you. And referrals there's accountability about referrals. So now that's also the challenge, because here's the thing: if I don't like the person that's in my BNI group and I don't trust them, then I'm technically supposed to be referring business to them, but guess what? I'm not going to still, like I'm still going to refer, because at the end of the day, when I refer somebody, my reputation's on the line.
Correct.
As well. Right. So, so BNI is a good one. You could also look at just, doing research in your area, local networking groups, chamber of commerce, events. You can serve on nonprofit boards. That's another thing where there's a lot of great networking but when you serve on boards in your community, or I know even in our community, our city's always looking for people to serve on different, like the planning and zoning committees and different things. Like, it may not be directly aligned with your business, but it's about where are people that you want to connect to. So think about where do your people gather. So that could be online or offline. Once again, you can create your own meetups. There's a good friend of mine. He's an insurance agent. He sells insurance for commercial lines for businesses. And he got tired of a lot of the formalized networking groups. And he actually came together with like 4 or 5 other guys that he really had good relationships with. And they said, why don't we put together our own little referral networking group? And so they would meet together once a month and kind of stay connected. And, they're always thinking about, how can I refer business to each other? And it's nothing super formal. It's not a paid for thing like BNI that you have to pay, annual fees or anything. It's just, they create their own thing because with trusted colleagues.
Right.
And then also just always be asking people, who do you know that I should know? Never leave a meeting, in essence, without, so if you connect with somebody, say, who else do you know that maybe I should know? Because if you really connect with somebody, then their circle of people are probably the kind of people you want to continue to grow and connect with. Right. So just asking that as your, kind of ending those conversations or continuing those conversations with people. There's been times where, even after months or years, I'll text somebody or give somebody a call, say, hey, do you happen to know anybody that, is like this, or that they would have this kind of need? And, many times it's been like, oh yeah, you should talk to so-and-so and let me connect you. That's how I said at the beginning of this, a friend of mine said, hey, I think you and this other friend of mine should talk. I think the two of you are very like-minded. You're doing different things, but you're kind of targeting the same kind of people with your businesses. So I think you guys would be great, so those relationships, it warms up the relationship when those introductions are made. So, here's the bottom line though. Networking is a very powerful way to grow your business if it's done well, but you just need to make sure that you do the things we're talking about today. I heard David one time said, somebody just said, just don't be weird. Like just a rule of thumb is just don't be weird. And that's what happens when people get out there and they're just being awkward and they're kind of being weird. It's just a bad look for you. And so, I think so much of this is just a mindset, right? There are skills and tactics for sure that you can apply to this, but just think about, this is relational work with a long-term benefit for you and hopefully the people you connect to. And when you look at it that way, and you're thinking about, how can I be valuable when I enter a group? How can I be valuable when I go to this meeting? How can I be valuable when I'm even talking to the dad or the mom sitting on the sidelines of my kid's sporting event, whatever? I mean, just be a good human being that wants to be valuable and helpful, and you'll just be amazed at how many doors tend to open up, whether it's immediate or later. That's to be determined, but be the one that somebody says, hey, do you know a guy? And they're like, yeah, you should call David. He helps people build courses and online coaching businesses. Like, that's what, do the things that can help you be known for what you want to be known for. Right. That's the biggest thing. Any final thoughts as we wrap up today?
Yeah, I mean, I just know that, I remember this even from public speaking. Like there was like this time where I was really getting asked to be speaking in public from stage a lot more than what I would have normally done in the past. And even that can be a very terrifying event. for a lot of people is getting in front. And I think there's a lot of correlation between networking and public speaking. I think it's because suddenly you feel like you're getting put on stage. It's all about you. And this is the stuff I hear all the time. It's all about you. What am I going to say? I have to have everything memorized. I have everything perfected. I got to have everything nailed down exactly to know exactly what I'm going to say. And I have to have all I'm going to get nervous because I'm going to forget something. I'm going to stumble over my words. Then I'm going to look dumb. And I'm like, do you realize that everything you're saying is the word I?
Right. Yeah.
And when the things finally shifted for me, and really, thankfully, it shifted fairly early on in the process, is I had to realize it's not about me.
Mm-hmm.
It's about helping the person that's sitting in that seat.
Yeah.
Or it's about helping the person that I'm going up and networking with or talking to in this group event.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Can I be helpful to you?
Yeah.
And so when you put all the impetus on serving, instead of giving a presentation and trying to look perfect, you take all the pressure off yourself.
Yeah.
Because I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to be all put together and have everything look professional. And no, I just need to be useful.
Right.
I just need to be helpful. And if I meet somebody and it's evident that, okay, I really can't do it, like what you are and what you're doing and what you're about, there's no match there. Okay, well, hey, it was great meeting you, and move on. And you move on to the next person and see if you can be helpful to them. But it takes all the pressure off of you. And then it's not like your friend that you talked about earlier on this episode, who is so nervous and awkward, because I can assure you all their focus was on themselves and like, oh, what am I going to say? What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Let it go.
Yeah.
And just, how can I be useful to this person if I can? And not you won't be able to every time.
Right.
But more often than not, and some, like you were saying, well, just, you need to know a person who's good at trimming trees. Mm-hmm. I know somebody, I can help you with that. Even if it's not related to my work, I can still be helpful.
Yeah. Well, and I'll leave this with this question. When you go and you're having this conversation, people, is just ask people, like, who's your ideal customer or client, and tell me a little bit about that, so that I can keep my eyes open and my ears open when I'm out and about doing what I do. When you ask that question, now you have an idea of who are they really serving, and then now they're on your radar, and now once again, that is right. Being a giver, right? You're being a giver of saying, look, help me understand more about you so that I can then also potentially funnel people your way. And once again, that's just a simple question that an introvert, can easily ask to get a conversation going. But it's also a great question for extroverts who tend to be too shallow if we're not careful. And so anyway, folks, the idea about all this is, be strategic, be intentional. Don't just go in haphazardly. Get your mind right when you're going into any meeting, any networking meeting, or even if you're showing up, like I said, to your kid's school event or whatever. Just get your mind right of, how can I be helpful today? How can I connect with people intentionally today, and not make it about me, but truly be curious about the people that I'm connecting to. So if we can help you with, once again, building out your business as a coach, a course creator, or a trainer, and doing workshops and seminars, check out designlaunchgrow.com, because a lot of the things that, actually within our community of people, David, there's people that know each other too, right? That say, you know what, I don't do this, but I know somebody who needs help in that area. So that's even another way. When you're in a program, you can connect in networking, relationships to help each other as well. That goes above and beyond getting the coaching and the training you need to work on your business. So, Design Launch Grow, a big part of it, a third of our program is community, right? As we have coaching calls, we have training videos and content, but we also have a community of people who can help one another and, once again, expand your network. And that can happen, online. So you're not, stuck in a certain region or an area of, location. So anyway, we'd love to help you out. Check out designlaunchgrow.com, and we'll see you guys next time.